UNDP's event on the occasion of the 2022 International Day of Persons with Disabilities. The future we create, how innovation can advance disability-inclusive development. My name is Hao Liangshu, and I'm head of policy and program support at UNDP. UNDP is proud to convene this event to contribute to the global dialogue on how disability inclusion can be a driver for achieving sustainable and inclusive development. International sign interpretation and live captioning will be available during this event. Participants are encouraged to share their questions and views using the question and answer function. Today, we reflect on the role of innovation in empowering an accessible and equitable world. Persons with disability are still left behind in global efforts to harness innovation and the digital solutions. We need innovation to be co-created, or it can further entrench exclusion. In today's event, we will hear from Jamila, a disability inclusion activist from Azerbaijan, who designed an application that made underground transportation accessible for persons with disabilities. Anna, a social entrepreneur from Bosnia and Herzegovina, will share her experience in developing an online application offering personalized routes based on motor ability and accessibility detection. UNDP Sri Lanka's Techno Entrepreneurship Initiative provides young persons with disabilities with platforms to innovate and a safe space to experiment with enterprise incubation. And the UNDP Indonesia's Restore project provides opportunities for persons with disabilities to access the digital economy and safe mobility. And to close the digital divide, we have a couple of examples as well. Since the war broke out in Ukraine, UNDP has worked with the Ukrainian government to leverage existing digital platforms for the continuation of public service delivery. Our colleagues from UNDP Philippines will showcase a project that aims to improve digitalization of data to support risk-informed development. We also need transformative solutions founded on principles of agency and the co-creation by and for persons with disabilities. Our Smart White Camp project in Rwanda improves mobility of persons with visual impairment with human-centered design features designed with and by persons with disabilities themselves. We will learn more about this from Emmanuel, one of the innovators in this project. And to end, transformative solutions also require greater public-private sector collaboration. We are honored to have with us today Sarah from Google to discuss assistive technologies that drive inclusion forward. With these words, I'm really honored to officially open our event. And before I hand over the floor to our moderator, Juan, from our Disability and Inclusion Officer at UNDP Vietnam, let us watch the video statement from UNDP Administrator Akim Steiner. I wish you all a great event, and thank you very much.
Technology and innovation will not only define the next era, they are central to shaping a more inclusive world today. That includes breaking down a global digital divide. This is particularly important in developing countries, which are home to 4 out of every 5 people with disabilities. Certain groups, such as migrants, refugees, and women with disabilities, are even more at risk of being left behind. The United Nations Development Programme is harnessing technology and innovation to help improve the daily lives of persons with disabilities. Work directly informed and often led by them. For instance, the UNDP Accelerator Lab in Bosnia and Herzegovina has supported the development of a new mobile app that is enabling people with motor disabilities to move independently by providing personalized routes. Powered by artificial intelligence, the app has been directly designed by persons with disabilities. Yet it is not simply about the next app or digital platform. To achieve the global goals, we need to shape the inclusive digital societies of the future. To this end, UNDP's new digital standards are helping us to design digital solutions that are human-centered, accessible, and inclusive. Look to Vietnam, where UNDP is working with the country's Blind Association to make digital state services more accessible. The United Nations is leveraging the power of technology and innovation so that persons with disabilities can have a say in their futures, towards a more inclusive, accessible world for all. Thank you.
Over to you, Juan.
Dear colleagues, a warm welcome to all of you to this UNDP Global Webinar titled, A Future We Create, How Innovation Can Advance Disability Inclusive Development. On the occasion of the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. First, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Đào Thu Hương, the Disability Inclusion Officer at the Governance and Participation Unit, UNDP Vietnam. I first joined UNDP in 2019 through the UNDP Talent Program for Professionals with Disabilities. For the past 3 years, together with my disability inclusion team and other UNDP colleagues, I have worked with government partners, organizations of persons with disabilities to advocate for the compliance of Vietnam's laws and policies for persons with disabilities and the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and their meaningful participation in the decision-making process and their full inclusion in all spheres of life. Our webinar will comprise of 8 presentations from UNDP country offices, partner organizations of persons with disabilities, UNDP Chief Digital Office, and our partners at Google. We are delighted to kickstart the event with a short video from Google. We will have a special guest from Google who will talk more about the topic of the video in her intervention later in the program. IT colleagues, could you please help me to show the video?
I hesitated for a few seconds, and I realised the enormity of it, what it really meant. I'm 55 years old, and for the first time, I was able to call my son.
This is Matthew. He likes to swim in cold water.
After a swim, you feel alive.
Like really, really cold water.
I also swam across the English Channel.
But that's another story. Matthew is deaf.
People think if I got a hearing aid on, I could hear everything, and that's not true. I lip read most of the time. I have 2 boys, and they're both very important part of my life.
This is Matthew's youngest son.
Hi, I'm Harry.
He lives in Hong Kong and plays rugby.
I always want to keep in touch with him. Before, I need to communicate with him through Zoom or WhatsApp. I would try and lip read him, but it's really hard because it's not 3D, it's a flat screen. When I got the Google picture phone, because the live capture feature, Harry was the first person I phoned. It was incredible. And we were talking for about half an hour. All of a sudden, he said,
Dad, do you realise this is the first time we've talked on the phone?
I would speechless for 3-4 seconds, and it realised what it really meant. I'm 55 years old, and for the first time in my life, I was able to call my son. It was wonderful. What you gonna do? Mobile phone been around for a long time, and yet hadn't been really fully accessible till now. That's what included me. You don't feel left out. Everybody feels the same.
Thank you. Now let's dive into the topics of our event. Our first intervention is focused on co-creating meaningful and impactful projects with people with disabilities. Our colleagues from UNDP Rwanda will talk about their innovative project, which improves mobility of persons with visual impairments. Over to you, colleagues.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Huang. My name is Maurice Gwamigabo, and I am the head of exploration at UNDP Rwanda Country Office. Thank you today. Thank you, everybody, for giving me this opportunity to be part of the webinar and to present our highlight of what we did on the Smart White Cane here in Rwanda that improves the mobility of people with visual impairment. So over the time we do horizon scanning where we realize what partners are in what categories, and we decide on where to have intervention. So we have realized that there is less and less people involved into harnessing technology for use with people with disability. So during the lockdown of COVID-19 in 2020, we did some virtual solution mapping where we came up with a smart stick prototype that was done by one of the young person in Rwanda. So we organized some co-creation and human-centered design with people with visual impairment under the umbrella of RUB, Rwanda Union of the Blind, that helped bring them together with us, together with UNDP, the innovator, and the beneficiaries. Then we work together to make sure we have this smart stick that can help them move freely. We have independence on their mobility. I'm glad today we have one of the beneficiaries who have been instrumental to us in the journey we took for designing this stick with the aim of really having one that is locally made with the material from local in Rwanda, and also that is cost friendly compared to the existing one. So we done a lot of human-centered design feedback back and forth, and now we have a smart stick that has many features that can include detecting obstacles that are in front and the obstacles that are on the head level, and also can tell you whether it is night or during daytime. And it has a GPS among some of the functionalities. So I will let one of the beneficiary here today with me to kind of tell you the testimonial to get the right information from the right person. Thank you, and over.
Thank you so much, colleagues. I'm Emmanuel Izere. I'm being honored to be here, to take place in this, to be here in this webinar. So I'm going to tell you my experience by using this Smart White Cane. First of all, I'm the one from the beneficiaries, but I am the one who took the participation of making this Smart White Cane because I was working here at UNDP as an intern. So I'm the one who took who helped in this journey, because as you all know, there is a jargon saying that nothing for us without us. So there should mean nothing if they don't consider us as persons with visual impairment. So now the difference of this Smart White Cane, This smart white can is helping me a lot, for instance, by detecting the obstacles. Because before this, when you are moving by using this normal white can, if I can call it so, you may hit something while you didn't even sense it. But when you have this smart white can, you go, and when you are going as far as or as you are going closer to it, it vibrates and even it rings, and you hears with your in your arms that there is an obstacle. And the other thing which is very crucial is that it can detect the things which are up on your head, such that if there is, for instance, a tree or a banner over to your head, and when you're going to hit it with your head, you will automatically hear that there is an obstacle. So this is a smart white can, which is very crucial. And the other thing, when it has the GPS, for instance, when you are persons with visual impairment, you may not know where you have put your smart white can, but you can call it and it rings and you can hear where it is. And when it is stolen, you can know where it is by detecting that smart white can using GPS. So it has a lot, and it helps me in many things. I'm saying me, but here on behalf of the other beneficiaries or persons with visual impairment. As Maurice said, we've done it with the RUB, Rwanda Union of the Blind. So the last but not the least, this smart white can is cost efficient because it doesn't cost too much rather than or compared to the other white can, because this is I can say it's our made. We made it. So this is also, it helps us in let's say homegrown solutions. As Rwanda, we have the motto homegrown solution. So this is our own homegrown solutions, which also meet with the SDG, leaving no one behind. So this is also cost efficient. So thank you so much. I think for the others, you will ask if you have some questions or clarifications. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I think we are done with the presentation from Rwanda. We'll wait for your questions. Over.
Thank you for the insightful presentation from Rwanda. Our second intervention will showcase the important role of persons with disabilities as co-creators and agents of change. It will also speak about the power of social media platforms to inspire change. We will be hearing from our UNDP Azerbaijan colleague, Najaz, and Jamila, a writer and a disability inclusion activist. Jamila developed an application which made the underground transportation accessible for persons with disabilities in the capital city of Azerbaijan, Baku. Over to you, Najaz and Jamila.
Dear colleagues, participants, guests, guided by the principle, nothing about us without us, UNDP country office in Azerbaijan has joined its effort with the national counterparts to engage people with disabilities and their organizations in developing and deploying new solutions to ensure inclusion and participation of all people with disabilities. Our team understands that sustainable development cannot be achieved without significantly transforming the way how we design our projects and programs. So to generate solutions, to listen to the priorities of the most affected by inaccessibility issue, we bring together people with disability in their full diversity to think of a way how we can work together and to improve the life of the people with disabilities. And in this regard, Jamila's stories is an excellent example. First, it shows how the social media can zoom in on the issue. And the second, which is more importantly, on the co-creation of the solution together of public authorities and the citizens. And so this co-creation, this co-design is exactly what the UNDP is looking for, to amplify and to scale up on the national level in order to address the wicked problems of inaccessibility, which will benefit not only the people with disabilities, but the society as a whole. So without further ado, I would like to pass the floor to Jamila.
Hi, I am Jamila. I am a writer and disability rights activist, and I use social media platform to inspire others to change. My story is about the change we have achieved with Baku Metro, making underground transportation accessible for people with disabilities. I was born in Azerbaijan, Göyçay village. 4 years ago, we moved to Baku, the capital of Azerbaijan. Before that, I have used metro in Turkey, but never in Azerbaijan. When I first used the metro in Baku, I wasn't sure what to do because it was illegal to use the metro with wheelchairs. There was even a sign that shows that you can't use it. So it was difficult for me, not only for physically, but also mentally. Because it wasn't only about the law, it was also about the society who didn't see the people with disabilities in wheelchairs in the most common place in the city. So I had to fight. Because if you don't see persons with disabilities around, you don't normalize it. One day, I just went to the metro station with assistance of others, got off the next station and went back. I just wanted to try it and be sure that is it possible. Then I filmed my mini adventure and posted it on social media, and my video went viral, sparking the public interest and catching the attention of leading officials responsible for managing the Baku Metro. As a result, I was invited to work with the Metro voluntarily to identify ways to ease subway travel for all people with disabilities. As we tested the app and service several times, it also became open for the public use. After almost 3 years, people changed too. Despite the metro being inaccessible for wheelchair users more than 50 years, now from workers to random passengers, everyone is starting to accept passengers with disabilities as a norm. One single video and years of hard work got us there. It is the power of believing something is right and acting on it. And I really wish that my story and our hard work will inspire others to make a change. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Narjas and Jamila, for your inspiring presentation. A similar story of innovation for social change comes from Bosnia and Herzegovina, where UNDP is supporting Ina, a local social entrepreneur. Ina developed a community-based online application to enable persons with mobility difficulties to move around safely and independently. Let's hear from you, Ina.
Thank you, Huang, for the introduction, and hello to everyone. It's really an honor to be presenting the WeMap project today. So my name is Anna, and I am the founder and CEO of WeMap. And I founded WeMap 2 years ago with a guiding notion of using technological innovation in creating accessible urban mobility. So the perception of urban space varies from one person to another, according to their physical and mental abilities, personal experience, and culture. And for me, an accessible city is an inclusive, smart, connected, truly human-centered space. So creating such a city means looking beyond disability to really enhance accessibility for all. And the formula consists in really looking to cities that know how to channel these unboundless advantages of technology towards the entire population. So luckily, every day we see new tech advancements emerging, and one of them is WeMap. WeMap is an end-to-end accessibility platform that enables people with different kinds of mobility disability to move around the city by providing them with pedestrian navigation that is based on their motor ability. So it helps people commute safely and independently anywhere in the world by mapping street obstacles, detecting accessibility levels, and providing a fully customized routes considering their mobility type. So by using WeMap, users can plan their trips ahead of time, get real-time notifications about barriers, and really have a one-stop shop for all city accessibility info. To the initial mapping efforts that were necessary for the further development of the algorithm itself were supported by the incredible UNDP Accelerator Lab in the Bosnia and Herzegovina, who supported us with co-organizing a testing mapathon in April this year, where we engaged with the High School of Civil Engineering in Sarajevo. So on that occasion, the students successfully mapped 150 obstacles in the span of 1.5 kilometer in the city center of Sarajevo in just 2 hours on the field through the beta version of the app. And these students continued to map beyond this event, and we currently have over 220 barriers in the database. On top of that, to help raise awareness about the problem of urban accessibility in our country, the Accelerator Lab also supported us in kicking off a comic book style social media content where, through the eyes of a wheelchair user, I am telling the story of the challenges I encounter daily by just trying to do simple everyday things like going to the cinema, work, or the city administration. So the further development of the app is currently ongoing, and we are looking for 2 distinctive outputs. The first one is developing a full scope of the navigation app, and the second one is gathering all the mobility data to support development of the policy options and concrete measures to remove those mobility barriers. So following the success of the initial testing mapathon, second mapathon will be open to everyone and will be again organized with the partnership of the Accelerator Lab. And just to conclude, with the help of the Accelerator Lab, the other partners, our local community, and the technology, we're really building a world where accessibility will be just another word in the famous Oxford Dictionary. Because in the end, the inclusive city mobility will not ever erase disability, but rather focus on different physical and mental capabilities and the technological innovations that put us, all of us, really as equals. Hong, thank you so much, and over to you.
Thank you, Ina. Let's continue our exploration of inspiring change through a video showcasing a project on entrepreneurship and technology for social change, targeting young people with disabilities in Sri Lanka. After the video, our colleagues from UNDP Sri Lanka, Kasan and Klunu, will share their insights. Technical colleagues, could you please show the video on the screen?
Did you know that there are over 1.6 million persons with disabilities in Sri Lanka, which is 7% of the country's total population? Sadly, 95% of these persons with disabilities do not have access to any form of education, while 68% are not economically active.
Welcome to the first ever Technopreneurship for Social Change program for persons with disabilities.
Recognizing this, UNDP and City Foundation, through the Youth Collab, conducted a training on entrepreneurship for persons with disabilities, together with the support of the Employers Federation of Ceylon.
Just give them a chance. Inclusion is very important. It's especially to change mindset from sympathy to empathy, dependence to independence, hidden to open, segregation to integration, exclusion to inclusion, to create a disabled-friendly environment.
Several sessions were conducted through Cisco e-learning programs to enhance their entrepreneurial and digital skills. Through Youth Collab, we want to encourage more youth-led social innovation and entrepreneurship for the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. We also want to promote the role of young people in society and help them realize their own potential. This is an initiative supported through Youth Collab, which is co-created by UNDP and City Foundation. This program is supported by Cisco Networking Academy and the Employers Federation for Ceylon.
Good afternoon from Sri Lanka. This is Kasunjet. Hope you all can hear me. For UNDP Sri Lanka, disability inclusion is a priority that we understand that disability inclusion is a multi-sectoral, cross-cutting development priority, and we use the twin track approach in line with the disability inclusion strategy of the UN, where we look at mainstreaming and developing inclusive initiatives as much as possible, as you already saw from the video itself, that we are looking at more of an inclusive lens, whereas we also acknowledge the fact that we might have to take a different route in customizing and developing standalone initiatives depending on the need and based on the type of disability or the special the needs, reasonable accommodation needs that might arise when we developing initiatives for PWDs. And whenever we design initiatives at UNDP Sri Lanka, we sort of have a approach where we look at use centric approach. We look at disability inclusion as something that we look at DPOs and OPDs as partners and co-creators, and we consult them at every given point in the project cycle, and how while we develop the initiatives, especially UNDP has already identified through their CPD disability inclusion as a top priority as well. We are not merely looking at disability persons with disabilities as mere beneficiaries. Apart from the work that was shown on the video, we have already done some work with the government and other stakeholders on disability inclusion, which includes providing simultaneous sign language interpretation in Parliament of Sri Lanka, starting from the budgetary reading, and we have now looked at both improving the accessibility of the UN compound in Sri Lanka through a user journey approach, user mapping approach, and we now are looking at supporting the accessibility component through a user journey related approach with the other partners like the local government authorities and the public places in Sri Lanka as well, beyond the internalization as well, and to explore this a little bit more further, I would now hand over the floor to Kulunu, my colleague from UNDP Sri Lanka. Thank you. Over to you, Kulunu.
Thank you, Kasun. It's great to be here and share our experience. So UNDP Sri Lanka has this flagship youth program called Hackadem, and it focuses on young people, and often young people that are not having a lot of opportunity from the most remote parts of the island. And the team has been committing to integrate the principle of leaving no one behind in a meaningful manner. And this is where the intervention that you saw in the video, that technopreneurship for social change, which is an initiative led by one of our team members, Nalani, comes into the picture. So the fact that we chose technopreneurship to pilot our work with young persons with disabilities was a conscious choice, because they could gain the necessary skills that allowed them to make the very challenging and empowering choice of starting their own business. This is sort of contrary to others looking at persons with disabilities and try to place them in jobs. It's a very passive, disempowering sort of intervention, right? So, and we also wanted to see how can we leverage the transformative elements of emerging trends such as digital media and e-commerce effectively. So this was a very exploratory pilot program a few years ago, but a few learnings and follow-ups that were successful are worth noting here in this forum, right? So there was a value to partnering with strong domain expertise. We were starting our work with young persons with disabilities, and the Employees Federation of Ceylon, who had a lot of experience in looking at persons with disabilities, is a strong partner. So if you are a country office or organization that's looking at starting work with young persons with disabilities, or any person with disabilities for that matter, we need partners with strong experience and domain knowledge. So following this experiment, our Citra Social Innovation Lab, which is South Asia's first social innovation facility, was able to conduct its first human-centered design co-design workshop for persons with disabilities, where we, together with persons with disabilities, we develop mobile or telecommunication technology-based solutions. So this is where stories from Rwanda and Bosnia and Herzegovina we heard were resonating with us very much. So both in the technopreneurship program and the HCD-based programs used accessible formats of workshop learning material, meaning tactile templates, material translated to Braille, and the aid of assistive technologies to ensure that there's meaningful participation. And we continue to use technologies and tools such as user journey mappings, experience diagrammings, and empathy, of course, which is a central element of human-centered design, to inform our design and delivery of programs. So beyond this, Hackadem, which is a youth program looking at building skills of young people, providing them platforms to innovate, and also supporting enterprise incubation, we want to be more and more inclusive. So sign language interpretation is something that we often bring in as much as possible. So in all application processes for any initiative, we have questions that ask for reasonable accommodation. And thus far on several initiatives, we've been able to create the conditions that are necessary so that young people with hearing impairments, visual impairments can participate meaningfully and effectively. So finally, I think we've heard the narrative about nothing about us without us. So how can we move beyond that to also nothing without us, where we completely include and mainstream persons with disabilities? So with the strategic importance, like Kasun mentioned, that we have on disability inclusion in the country of Sri Lanka, and the strong capacity, of course, Kasun is leading on this one, we have a lot of opportunities to engage for disability inclusion, and we look forward to engaging in learning opportunities such as this to widen our horizons and simply do better. So on behalf of our country office in Sri Lanka, from me and Kasun, thank you so much.
Thank you, UNDP Sri Lanka. Let's continue our webinar with another inspiring project from Indonesia. Chris from UNDP Indonesia, joined by Rina from Indonesia Association for Women with Disabilities, will tell us more. Welcome, and please take the floor.
Thank you very much, Zuang. So, colleagues, I will tell a bit of a story about the impact of COVID-19 in Indonesia. So, COVID-19 pandemic impacted everyone across Indonesia, as has been documented, but people with disabilities were especially impacted, particularly during the long period of restriction to community mobility. Data collected during a joint UNDP-UNICEF survey with the government of Indonesia revealed that 47.9% of households with family members with disability experience a disruption of daily activities, while 24.6% reported that their work was impacted. In line with UNDP's mandate as the focal point agency for COVID-19 social and economic recovery, UNDP Indonesia implemented the Response Toward COVID-19 Resilience Project, or RESTORE, aiming to support the government to respond and recover from the impact of the pandemic. One of the intervention is the capacity building of micro, small, medium enterprises, including those owned and managed by persons with disabilities, to make their business more sustainable and inclusive. This initiative aims to empower persons with disabilities to be able to adapt their businesses with the COVID-19 impacts, including the rapid transition from conventional into digital economy. The country office also developed a sustainable business module, which engages persons with disabilities in business performance indicator and in capacity building programs. We work with a woman with mobility impairment who owns a snack store. She joined at the first batch of the program and improved her company profile and created a business plan pitch deck. She was also selected among the 25 best MSME as an MSME owners and had an opportunity to present her business plan to impact investor during the business matching session at the end of the program. Working with persons with disabilities and organization of people with disabilities from the early phase of project planning, we develop inclusive and accessible tools and approaches. We also establish a continuous feedback mechanism where people with disabilities can share inputs to improve our tools. This certainly helps increase confidence and, of course, trust. Furthermore, these two ways of communication can also benefit us, particularly in terms of capacity. Providing a sign language interpreter in our capacity building tools is critical. UNDP established a peer network where facilitators bridge communication, engage with participants, and broaden the network as we work together to ensure no one left behind. Now, without further ado, let's hear from Ms. Rina Prasarani, our partner from Indonesia Association of Women with Disabilities, to share her thoughts. The floor is yours.
Thank you. While the information, during the pandemic, while the information on social distancing protocols and related measures were disseminated during the onset of the pandemic, these messages were not inclusive and were not accessible for people with disabilities. For example, physical distancing measures are impossible for a person with a visual impairment. So UNDP worked with the HWDI on the campaign to ensure inclusive communication that encouraged the general public to be mindful of the needs of persons with disabilities. Although the stigma still remains a challenge, but the campaign raised general awareness through video broadcast on public transportation in recent months. Persons with disabilities have noted that an increase in access to material and an ease in ability to operate in public sphere. So this collaboration shows that including persons with disabilities in the discussion is key to effective engagement and meaningful participation, and if adopted globally and across all the sectors, particularly in information and communication technology, society will be far more equal, mainstreaming inclusion, and will ensure a dimension of disability in policy recommendation covering a wide spectrum of social and economic concern. Thank you.
Thank you for your wonderful presentation. Next, I would like to introduce Rodolfo from UNDP Philippines and Maureen, a disability inclusion expert to discuss their recent project on digitalization and inclusion of persons with disabilities. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Ang, and for the introduction, and thank you to all our participants here today. UNDP Philippines is supporting the disability inclusion agenda, not only from a beneficiary perspective, but also from an agency and co-creation perspective, wherein persons with disabilities and OPDs are considered as agents of change and co-creators of UNDP interventions. With this, in 2019, UNDP Bangkok Regional Hub implemented the Accelerating Disaster Risk Reduction and Enhancing Crisis Response through Digital Solutions, or also known as the DX4 Resilience Project. The project, funded by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, or MOFA, of Japan, was implemented in 4 countries, namely Indonesia, Nepal, Philippines, and Sri Lanka, and aims to strengthen disaster risk reduction and response by improving digitalization of data through innovative partnerships and solutions to support risk-informed development. Within the DX4 Resilience Project, the Mapping and Analysis of Vulnerable Groups, or MAVG study, was conducted jointly with the Philippine government. The study gathered insights of vulnerable individuals throughout the country's 3 major geographical divisions of Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, including people with disabilities, which comprised around 86% of the respondents nationwide. The mapping sought to support digital readiness in terms of climate and disaster resilience in the Philippines by better understanding where the most vulnerable are, the risks they face, their priority needs, and the barriers and opportunities that digital solutions can help address. In this, there were several key findings, and in the interest of time, there's one very interesting discovery I'd like to mention, which may be important to this discussion here today. It's that persons with disabilities in the Philippines were found to endure mostly on their own capacities and strong sense of community during disasters, although they require better access to resources and information on risk reduction and preparedness. For instance, almost half of the respondents with disabilities mentioned they were uncertain or unable to evacuate during disasters due to the lack of information or communication and alerts that they were able to respond to. They also experienced difficulties accessing evacuation areas. Almost half of respondents also said they were either not feeling confident to join discussions on community preparedness for disasters or did not receive invitations to participate in such discussions. And it's interesting to contrast this with the response of the individuals that were part of their community, which were not considered as persons with disabilities. This intervention, meaning the MAVG, became very important. It created a strong push towards the inclusion of at-risk individuals in the decision-making process, especially at the local government or community level. This approach was included as a recommendation to ensure that digital transformation initiatives would narrow rather than widen the digital divide and leave those that are already behind even further behind. These recommendations, as part of the digital readiness strategy, was approved in the recent Resolution Number 5 series of 2022 by the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council of the Philippines, which is the premier multi-agency group managing and responding to disasters in our country, last March 2022. With this, may I turn it over to our partner who was pivotal to the success of this project, Dr. Maureen Avamata, or Mau. Over to you, Doc.
Yes, thank you, Rod. Hello, everyone. Good evening here from the Philippines. And my name is Mau, and I'm a woman with disability. Connectivity is an integral or vital part to access basic services of and for persons with disabilities. And how we can be able to do that if there are barriers such as in the communication, in technology, in information. And how did we do things here in the Philippines so that there will be the narrowing of the digital divide. Okay, one is we do the active and meaningful participation or through consultation of persons with disabilities. We ensure that their voices are being heard. During pandemic, it was 360 degrees that it should be online, virtual, everyone was in lockdown. So how can our persons with disabilities be able to reach or gather or learn informations, particularly with a study that UNDP Philippines did during that time, wherein I was involved as one of the consultants, of course. So we did this digitalization and we did accessible transformation. How? Definitely by making all the meetings or the online or virtual thing to be accessible for the deaf, like having the Filipino Sign Language interpreters, captioning, and other means for our different types of persons with disabilities to be able to be communicated. Okay, another is awareness raising. There is continuous awareness raising about disability. Here in the Philippines, we're doing the sandwich approach. We're doing the top and the bottom approach so that not just in the national level, but of course in the grassroots level, particularly not just persons with disabilities, but the people in the community where persons with disabilities are included. So we have this principle, nothing about us without us, so that we have to ensure that persons with disabilities needs, okay, are taken into account because of the existing partnership that we have already with UNDP and other CSOs and non-government organizations and other duty bearers here in the Philippines. And of course, ensuring that in the local government units, that the organizations of persons with disabilities be accredited in the LGU or the local government unit level. This is to ensure that the voices of persons with disabilities be able to be heard, definitely, and we are also being involved not just in the activities, we are also involved in the planning, in the program making, and of course in the legislative agenda here in the Philippines. And again, it should be, or it is always nothing about us without us, so that no one should be left behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Rodolfo and Dr. Maureen. Now let's turn to one of our partners from the private sector, Google. We will learn more about driving the accessibility and disability inclusion in the emerging markets from Sarah. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you very much. And I'm really enjoying all of these fascinating discussions about some of the amazing things that UNDP in partnership with communities is doing globally. So, and thank you for inviting me to participate. I was asked to address a few key topics, which I'll talk about now, again, with my perspective from the commercial, technical, industrial sector. So one is, what are some of the challenges to the industry and what are the hurdles? And for those of us who are in this space, it sometimes seems unbelievable. It seems like disability inclusion inside and outside the workplace should be such an easy agenda to pitch. We all know the statistics. There are over 1 billion people with disabilities globally. And it's also, of course, a community that any one of us and any one of our families can join at any time. So given that disability is something that affects all of us now or in the future, and yet, we still need so much advocacy to make disability inclusion a reality. And so there are a few issues that I'll touch on that, really, why is it not the easy sell? Where are some of the complexities? The first point that I'll touch on is in the technology space. So there are coding requirements, specifically if we think about making software accessible for blind people that use a screen reader. So a screen reader speaks out the information, enabling a blind user to use digital technology effectively. But there are things that you need to do, even though you have screen readers reading it out from a software perspective. So for example, images that we have on the screen need to be described with text, or a screen reader will dutifully just read out image for an unlabeled image. So that's just one small example of one of the things you need to build into your software. And we also talk about the fact that it's easier, to build in accessibility from the outside rather than retrofitting it afterwards. This is true, but still, even building it from the beginning is not intuitive. And software engineers need to be trained on what it means to build for accessibility, and they need to be motivated to do it. There's not enough emphasis in universities, not enough training, and often not enough emphasis in companies to build accessibility into coding practices. So that's on all of us to change. We are aware that some of the disability inclusion advocacy comes in the form of legislation, which is critical. But even with legislation and standards, challenges and hurdles remain. For example, companies, governments, and others that can influence disability inclusion on the ground and really make a difference still question whether there is a business case to support the work. So there's a general lack of awareness about the size of the population, the financial resources that they influence, and the gaps that are needed in order to create a disability inclusive world. And a gap in terms of understanding that the societal barriers are bigger blockers than a person's disability. So again, it's on organizations to make the changes that will enable people with disabilities to live an equitable life. And the last thing I'll say in this category is there's a lack of understanding around the scope of disabilities. There's a go-to assumption when people who aren't in the space think about disabilities, they think about physical disability. And we know that the majority of disabilities are invisible: hearing loss, mental health, neurodiversity. And many of us have heard stories, say, of somebody who is blind, who notified an airline that they're blind, and they'll need, say, some sighted assistant to exit the airport. And when they get off the plane, there's a wheelchair waiting for them, which is clearly not the correct or requested accommodation. How can we resolve some of these hurdles? Education, training, advocacy, and especially exposure to people with disabilities at all levels of society. So these are some things that can help and are critical. Coming from Google, I'll now talk a little bit about technological innovation. And you've seen some of that actually in the video that opened up this webinar as key. So there are many accessibility gaps in the software world, and that negatively impacts disability inclusion in the workplace, in the e-commerce space, in social spaces, and so on. So again, technology isn't going to be the whole solution, but can help. So let's again think about a blind user that accesses computer-based information using a screen reader. And now imagine there are diagrams and images with no alternative text describing what the images are. But there are now technological capabilities that can automatically remediate that, identifying the images, describing them to the blind user. So Google, for example, has an automatic image description feature. It's called Get Image Descriptions on Chrome, as with all of Google's assistive technologies, free to users. And so even if the software developer doesn't understand the need to include alternative text, the user will still be able to use the software. And in a final example, and this is what you saw earlier, speech recognition can do a lot. It's improved dramatically over the last several years with improvements to machine learning. And there's now automated captioning, again, as you saw in the video currently available as part of many applications. Human captioning is amazing, but it's not always available, and it is expensive when we're thinking about making things available at a global level. And you saw in the video a user who was deaf having the first ever phone call, with his son, using, again, one of these automated captioning services. Another example that's gotten very popular from Google is called Live Transcribe. It captures conversations in real time on Android devices in, I don't know, some 100 languages. So giving users easier opportunities to communicate when there are no captioners available. And so certainly when we're talking about the global opportunities, captioning won't be available, but even in a Western community, the hallway conversations, the lunchtime conversations, and so on. So technology can't fix it all, but it can help. And then finally, I'll touch on emerging markets, which is my area of passion and focus now at Google, particularly countries like India, like Africa, like Latin America. There are particular sets of challenges in these areas. The data indicates that people with disabilities are more impacted with low employment, low literacy, poor healthcare, vis-a-vis the general population. Limited availability of equitable education. There are stigmas around disability, in some cases seeing disability as a curse. And Wi-Fi access, internet access, is not pervasively available. And so therefore, and there's low access to needed assistive technologies. There are many assistive technologies that are freely available. We need to increase awareness about them. Again, for Google technologies, they're available on Android phones, which are the dominant operating system, the dominant mobile platform, globally, particularly in emerging markets. But many of these technologies, if they're designed with a view of Western culture, they assume access to Wi-Fi and affordable data plans, again, presenting challenges to emerging market communities. So we need to do more to ensure that these technologies can be used in emerging markets by modifying current products to be more suitable for these economies and for their environment. And also many of the things that we heard about today with technologies and applications designed with the community, by the community, and therefore much more sensitive to the needs on the ground in terms of availability, in terms of access to internet, and in terms of price points. So thank you for this opportunity, and I am looking forward to the remainder of talks in this webinar.
IT colleague, could you please help me to show Google video?
I'm set. Yeah. Ready?
I completely lost hearing when I was already a year old. Technology provides tremendous opportunities to help people with disabilities. I'm a research scientist at Google, and I'm developing speech recognition in technology. Speech recognition accuracy finally became so good that I could fulfill my dream for whole life, to use speech recognition to communicate with people. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fine, and how are you?
I'm doing good. What can I get you today?
I would like tea. Live Transcribe is an application that runs in Android. It provides transcription of speech for deaf and hard of hearing in real time.
Dimitri worked with the speech team to develop that technology, and Google has made strides in this in the past couple years, but the app itself is what I've been working on. I'm not an Android engineer. I saw an opportunity for something useful and dug into that and kind of evolved naturally.
Did I already mention to you I'm having one of my famous chili parties again this weekend?
This was something that was born out of Dimitri's needs. All the technology existed already. It was kind of just a matter of hooking the wires together. Gallaudet University is the premier university for the deaf and hard of hearing in the world, really. We have been partnering with them to see how people are going to use Live Transcribe.
I started using it, and the first time was with my 2 sons. Both of them are hearing, and they can sign a little bit, but not a lot. So I use Live Transcribe with them.
Why do they say go?
Live Transcribe is changing the way we communicate with hearing people.
How about your math class?
I'm doing good.
We stop to review every day. Here you can see an example of multiplication problems.
Information is power. And Live Transcribe gives us deaf people an opportunity to be more empowered.
Thank you so much for your fantastic presentation. It speaks to me a lot, and I believe to other screen reader users as well. And now for the last intervention, let's welcome Vitaly from UNDP Chief Digital Office. Over to you, Vitaly.
Thank you, Huang, and hello, everybody. My name is Vitaly Zakhozhy. I'm a digital analyst in the Chief Digital Office at UNDP. And thank you for this opportunity to be a part of this webinar and to speak about the inclusive digital transformation and the digital standards that our office has developed for UNDP, and that UNDP's administrator, Achim Steiner, mentioned at the very beginning of today's webinar in his keynote. So let me start by saying that UNDP believes that digital transformation must be intentionally inclusive, thoughtfully designed, and implemented with people and human rights at the center. And to be truly inclusive, digital transformation requires a whole of society approach. To build strong digital ecosystems, we need to bring everybody together, all parts of the societies, the government, businesses and private sector, civil society, and of course, citizens. And it's critical to engage people with disabilities in this process as well. The agency of persons with disabilities is so important. They are and should be the masters of their own actions, of course, if provided with the necessary enabling environment. We believe that digital transformation is inclusive when it, first of all, addresses the needs of people. Second of all, ensures that it does not exacerbate existing inequalities, that it empowers underrepresented groups and promotes equality. And lastly, it is inclusive when it protects people from the adverse effects of digital technologies. Earlier this year, Chief Digital Office of UNDP released a policy brief where we elaborated on UNDP's positioning around the inclusive digital transformation. So I encourage you all to read the policy brief and share it widely with your partners. In the brief, we identified 10 good practices that illustrate how countries can boost their digital transformation with inclusive approaches. One of those good practices is promote inclusive service design. And we heard today a couple of good examples of how we can do that. And it is especially related to people with disabilities. Another example of this practice would be Ukraine with their work on barrier-free governmental digital services and platforms. A study that was commissioned by UNDP and the Ukrainian Ministry of Digital Transformation showed that the governmental digital platforms and services did not fully comply with international accessibility standards. And to fix that, the ministry and its partners were rethinking the e-services, documenting the user journey of people with disabilities. And UNDP also organized a training on making the websites and other digital resources inclusive and accessible, with more than 200 civil servants and governmental officials from across Ukraine attending that training. And then it resulted in a release of updated, more accessible, more inclusive digital services in Ukraine. And it's great to see, I'm from Ukraine and I'm in Ukraine right now. It's great to see how the inclusive design of the service platforms and how the intentional attempt to increase the accessibility of those services greatly help all Ukrainians during the times of war that started in February this year. Let me also cover today the topic of the digital standards that we developed for UNDP. And I think, when it comes to the UNDP digital programming, like in the office, we have observed that many digital projects fail to meet their successful goals. And also some of the resources get lost when personnel don't know what good means, right? What good looks like. So to solve this, UNDP created 10 digital standards in order to give very practical guidance for program managers on implementing the digital projects, and also to set those standards that good to ensure the quality and inclusivity of our digital outcomes. So out of those 10 digital standards, I think 3 are particularly relevant for the inclusivity, accessibility, and people with disabilities. So the first one is start with the need, build for and with the user. So it's a cornerstone of the human-centered design, and the standards. This standard highlights the importance of focusing on the problem first and on understanding the users of the intended solution. The next standard is bridge the digital divide. So we all know that even with the best intentions, digital solutions are likely to exclude certain people. So it's important to understand what barriers exist and who are the intended audience. So what barriers exist for those people, for the intended users. And it's of course critical to be intentional about addressing those barriers when designing and developing the solution. And lastly, the other standard that I want to discuss today is called do no harm. We know that technology is not neutral, right? And it has the potential to do great harm as well as work for the good. So this standard stresses the importance of looking at the consequences of the implementing a specific technology, and also the importance of thinking through mitigating strategies and measures to avoid negative outcomes. So with that, I'd like to pass that back to you, Huang. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Vitaly. To wrap up all presentations today, I would like to show you a special video from UNDP Indonesia. IT colleagues, please support.
Pagi hari surya menatap sang surya, bersiap kembali memulai dunianya yang hening. Suara memang bukan akhirnya, namun dunia tetap miliknya. Lain Andira berjalan di dunia yang tanpa rupa, dengan ponsel pintarnya di pesannya, transportasi kemana saja.
Pesan sekarang, pengemudi Anda telah sampai. Pengemudi Anda seorang teman tulis. selalu pakai masker, cuci tangan, dan duduk di belakang pengemudi sebelah kiri. Saya pengemudi taksi online, ada yang bisa saya bantu? Pak, saya tunanetra, bisa bantu tuntut saya ke mobil.
Jika harapan dunia lebih baik ada, maka mulailah. Ketika sebuah lingkaran terbentuk dan kau melihatnya, masuklah ke dalamnya. Jadilah bagian dari semuanya.
Terima kasih ya.
Lanjutkan kebaikan dan ciptakan lingkaran kebaikan.
Thank you for the amazing video. Now I would like to invite my co-moderator, Miss Ioana, who has collected many questions from the floor for our presenters. Over to you, Ioana.
Thank you, Huang. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Ioana Critaru, and I work for UNDP's Crisis Bureau in Geneva. I'm very happy to be co-moderating this session together with my colleague, Huang. So we have a few questions in our chat box, and I would like to go through them one by one and open the floor to our panelists and all other resource persons on this event to respond. We will also be sharing the recording of this session along with the videos and the answers to this question by email with all of the participants. So let's start with the first question from Fernando. And his question is the following: is UNDP using this remarkable experience to mainstream disability inclusion criteria throughout all of its programs? So this was the question. And I'm going to use my privileged position on this event to give the floor maybe first to my colleague Alessandra Ercolani, who is our Corporate Disability Inclusion Advisor based in BPPS in UNDP. And if our panelists also would like to complement Alessandro's intervention, please raise the hand and I will give you the floor. So Alessandro, may I give you the floor, please?
Thank you very much, Ioana. Thank you, Yuang, and thanks so much to all the panelists who presented their amazing, inspiring work so far. My name is Alessandro Colani, as Ioana said. I'm at the Disability Inclusion Focal Point at HQ headquarters at UNDP. I'm currently wearing a white shirt and glasses. I just wanted to address the first question from an HQ perspective, from a global perspective, of how do we mainstream these experiences. And just to pick up on what Vitali said about the UNDP digital standards that were also mentioned by Hakim Steiner, UNDP administrator, in his speech. We not only devise digital standards to operate from a top to bottom approach, so to influence our country operations and programs in their application and implementation of digital solutions on the ground to target disability inclusion, but we also harvest the findings from these amazing experiences. Some of them we heard about today, to influence our global corporate policy at UNDP. So it's about top to down, top to bottom, and bottom to top approach. UNDP does mainstream disability inclusion across all its programs and operations. That means that we not only target disability inclusion in our work, and we have targeted interventions, but we also mainstream disability inclusion in our consultation processes, in our stakeholder engagement processes, in our programs, and in our operations. That means that in our employment and reasonable accommodation, IT, web accessibility, disability inclusion is duly mainstreamed. We have an internal network of disability inclusion experts that allow us to do so, and that on a daily basis share information and knowledge and capacity within and outside the organization. So I think that roughly answers Fernando's questions, but of course, happy to follow up on that. And thank you very much, Ioana.
Thank you, Alessandro. Just to ask whether any of our panelists would like to provide a view. So Kasun, I see your hand up. Please take the floor. And you will need to unmute yourself, please, so we can hear what you say.
Yeah, sorry. Just want to add on to that. I, as one of the first participants of the talent program for young professionals with disabilities, I felt from that time onwards that having the disabled colleague in the system helped them to look at user perspective, especially, and with the introduction of the UN disability strategy, which looks at a very informed scorecard with specific targets, have pushed the envelope in terms of making sure it is accessible and it is mainstreamed in every step of the way. And for that, it is very important to have a good rapport with the community, and UNDP is doing a lot of things in the right way at this point. And I feel like we do a lot of things right, especially having checklists especially for accessibility checks and reasonable recommendation guiding notes and so on and so forth has helped us to mainstream disability inclusion, and having a well-established network where we share our knowledge as well at a global stage. Thank you. Just wanted to add a couple of points. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kasun. I propose we move to our next question, which is very interesting. And this question has been proposed by Amy. What are some of the key challenges during co-creation of solutions, and how did you address them? What were some of your lessons? I see the hand up from Jamila, one of our brilliant panelists. Jamila, the floor is yours, please.
Hi, I want to answer that. My biggest challenge was to get the attention of society, because I don't know it's a global thing or only in my country, but society sometimes thinks that issues of people with disabilities are not issues of society, it's only the issues of people with disabilities. So I had to use my social media and connect with people to give them content, engage with them, and show the biggest picture that if I have challenge on some areas of life, it means that it is the biggest problem of the society, not only mine. So we should solve this problem together, cooperate, and make big changes. I think right now I'm little bit achieve that, because right now my solution on the metro, not only for people with disabilities, also for elderly, pregnant women, parents with small children, they can use the solution too, to use the public transportation and subway. So we solve the biggest problem, one of the biggest problem of the society together.
Thank you, Jamila. Over to Sarah.
Yeah, so it's a good question, and I think from the company perspective, our best way of addressing this is making sure that we have deep relationships with NGOs that represent communities with disabilities and will, enable us to work with the community on the ground, both from a their disability perspective and also in different locations, so that we can get all of these views that we sometimes can't get within our company. Also within a company, you need to be sensitive, not to add an additional burden to your employees with disabilities. That's sort of something that you see early with people very excited saying, I want to make sure that this is a spectacular piece of software for people with disabilities. Can you spend a few hours with me? So we needed to make sure that we created some separations. The people with disabilities that work at Google work on any number of things, and it's not necessarily to help other people, design whatever their applications are. So I think the relationships with external communities have been critical for us.
Thank you, Sarah, very much. I would like to pass the floor to our other panelist, Dr. Mao. Over to you, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Ioana. So I guess the number one challenge that we experienced during this with the UNDP Philippines was when we were getting the survey. I guess there are trust issues of OPDs, in terms of the NGOs, but because of the bridge that I had with UNDP Philippines and these organizations throughout the country, and telling them the objective of the survey, or the tool that we're doing with the program or the project. So they were easily, not just a piece, of course, but they were able to understand what is the need for this survey. Number two, the internet connection. So some in the far-flung areas where we asked for the 86 responders. So what we did is had another strategy by calling them through their mobile phone, or texting them, sending them SMS, or calling in their messenger in the Facebook. So that's it. So that we may be able to get their response on the survey that we made for UNDP Philippines. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mao. Excellent. I'm going to move on to our next question. We have just a few moments left out of our webinar, and we wanted to cover as many questions as possible from our audience. So the next question is addressed to our UNDP Accelerator Labs, and we've heard from quite a few from the field. So Chiara's question is the following: how do you engage organizations of persons with disabilities on the ground? Any additional thoughts from our colleagues from the Accelerator Labs? And I see our colleague Nargiz from Azerbaijan. Nargiz, the floor is open.
Thank you for the question, Ioana. So I think on our side, because UNDP work and implements about 30 projects here. So we have projects that not directly for the people with disability, but let's say working with the civil society organizations. Therefore, working with the organizations that deals with people with disability is not a challenge for us. We engage with them through different projects that we are currently or had in the past. For us, I think the challenge is to engage with the informal groups or activists who are not a part of any organization, but still have a loud voice in promoting rights of people with disability, or coming up with the solutions. So overall, for us, when we have this organization working through different, let's say, projects, we are working with them currently. We would like to work more with the people who are not part of the organization, but still are the loud voice. So, and apart from that, we also try to have this cross the portfolio approach and really work cross-cutting across different programs that UNDP is implementing. And even if the project is not directly engaged with people with disability, we try to add it as an activity or as a component. I'll give you the example. We had a project on the rule of law and the human rights. Areas with the certain activities, but we thought how we can also have people with disability to have engaged and have some activity within that project, because more or less there is this connection with just the one that we have identified. And even working with the projects which are not part of the solution for people with disability, we still try to add that component and have their voice as well. So that's all on my side. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nargis. We are reaching the end of our webinar, and we would like to be respectful of everyone's time. We have questions from colleagues in the Q&A, including Jonathan and Ashley, and we will address these questions by email when we will share with you the recording and the useful resources that were shown. And in fact, one of our videos will have English subtitles, so all of our audience will be able to access that video. So with this, I'm going to thank you for your questions. I'm going to hand over to our principal moderator, Wong, to say a few closing remarks, and I wish to thank her as well for this wonderful facilitation. Wong, over to you.
Thank you, Ioana. To conclude our webinar, I would like to send our special thanks to all presenters, and thank you all for joining us and actively engaging in our webinar. We will put together an event report together with the questions and answers and the video recording, as Ioana has just mentioned, and which will be available online. And you will see our contact details on the screen. We hope that you all are inspired by the projects you heard today and that you will leave this webinar as a disability inclusion advocate. Thank you and see you again very soon. Good day and good night to all.